The Lord is good, and all the time. The nature of God and His project over all humanity was and still continues to be of life, not of death. Because life originates from God. And this is what all the readings of today is talking about. I would like to start with an image which has been brought back to my mind after reading the three readings of today. It was just in 2016, the beginning of the year. I was still living that side which we call Moroyok. It's beyond iRadio. I came to the town at 3 o'clock. Then I stayed late. So I finished my business more or less at 6:30. So I had to hurry back because our road is dangerous. Sometimes we were always at a gunpoint being threatened. So I went at around 7, just some meters after passing iRadio. I met a father and a mother. They were carrying their small baby. And when they saw the car, they realized that this is the car of the church, because they are also in the same path where I was heading. So they told me, "Father, look, the child is sick since in the morning. So we are trying to reach the hospital." And I said, which means I have to come back with them. So I put them in the car and we drove to the hospital. As we entered the hospital, we found that everywhere was dark. In the emergency room, they were using their telephone to provide a little bit of light and to write more or less the statement. But then they told us, "This is a baby. You take to the ward of babies, of children." So we went there, and we found a young man, a very good doctor. I think most probably he just graduated. And so he was the one attending the children. As soon as he saw us, he left what he was doing and immediately he attended the child. And with his telephone, he just put the torch for putting the drip to the small baby. So the drip was put, and we stayed there until 9. So I told them, "Okay, let me go back. I hope I will reach home." So I went back, and in the morning when I went to check them, I found the baby was already playing. Thank you to this doctor. A doctor who does his work faithfully in spite of limitations in the structure of the hospital. He gave back life to this child. Thank you to these parents who are so responsible, who have to risk to come on foot halfway in order to give back life to their child. Thank you for them. And we would like to thank also all those who are committed in one way or another in order to make sure that life is protected, to make sure that life flourishes. And this is the point of the three readings. In the three readings we had, and I would like to concentrate on the gospel, because the gospel summarizes all the other two readings. Now, the gospel is telling us that there is the leader of the synagogue, whose name is called Jairus. And for the people of Israel, A temple, the synagogue, is always the symbol of God, where life can flourish. But seems to be Jairus, finding that his daughter is sick, he found that this institution, this synagogue, no more can give salvation to his child. And so he has to find somewhere else where he can find life back to his child. And so he heard of Jesus, and he went to Jesus. Unfortunately, between the distance from where they start the journey to his house, we have in the middle there the story of a woman who was suffering for 12 years, bleeding. She spent all her resources in order to recover the health, but could not. And when this woman saw that this is Jesus, and they were talking about Jesus as the healer, so she said, I have to make my way through to reach Jesus. And we have to understand that somebody who was impure, like this woman, was considered to be impure, and she was not supposed to enter in the middle of the crowd. She would have been stoned. But this woman, with a strong faith, believing that Jesus will give me back my life, she risked her life. She went in the middle of the crowd, found her way, and touched Jesus. And indeed, she recovered. Now, the news came from the house of the ruler that, why do you have to disturb the master? Your daughter is already dead. There is no need to disturb the master. These people did not still understand who Jesus is. Because in the Gospel of John, we have a very clear sentence there that Jesus said, I have come so that you may have life. And not just have half of it, no, but have life in abundance. This is the project of God. And this should be also the project of any Christian community, of any church who follow the Master, who follow Jesus, who spend the whole of his life walking that we may have life. So these people did not understand Jesus. And so for them, to ask Jesus to go to the house means disturbance. But for Jesus, that was not disturbance. He simply got up and he said, I am going. And he went in order to give back life to this young girl. Now, sometimes we can compare the institution of Jairus, this synagogue, like other political parties, like other institutions in the world, like other organizations, like other societies, which can no longer give life to people. We can compare this institution. And so people who live in these institutions, who live in that society or in that church, they have to go somewhere else to look for life. So today, we find that this temple is no longer giving life. But there is one thing very important: the meeting of Jairus and Jesus. And this is an invitation to all the Christians, to all of us who are the disciples of Jesus, to remember that to go towards Jesus, to encounter him, means to recover life, means to bring back life to those people whose life have been taken by force away. Like people who are sick, like people who are hungry, like people who are insecure, These are people whose life is in danger, and we hear these voices every day, every day. They are lamenting. Others are regretting why I was born. Why? Because our institutions, our political parties, our churches is no longer giving life. And we need people like this young doctor who can spend his time, even with just a small light from his mobile phone, he can still give life to people. We need this kind of institutions. And Jesus is giving back hope to Jairus. Our encounter with Jesus is very, very important in order for us to transform our society, to change the systems which are already old, they are rusted, and they don't give life any longer. And we are invited for that. That's why St. Paul, in the second letter to the Corinthians, he is saying that in order for us to solve the problems of the community, we need to follow the example of Jesus. Jesus, who was poor, but through his poverty, he made us to have life in full. He was so generous, and he solved the problems of inequality, the problems of discrimination, by giving his life so that those who are already without life, or those whose life is in danger, may have life in full. And so, the invitation of Jesus to us today, the invitation of the liturgy to us as a Christian community, we are to come out of the old system which is no longer giving life, whether it is our family, whether it is our culture. Some cultures no longer give life. They take life away. Some churches, some religious institutions, some political parties, some political institutions are no longer giving life. You just look around the world. Recently, we hear what is happening in Cameroon. They were in peace. They were struggling, but in peace. Now things are going astray. You go to Nigeria, you go to Congo, you go to Yemen, you go to Syria. The institutions are no longer giving life to people. People are spending money for buying arms instead of spending money for bringing something that brings life to people. And so the invitation of Jesus today to me and to you, my brothers and sisters, the first invitation is we are invited to be defenders and advocates of life, so that many people who cannot stop crying, searching for life, people who continue to be afraid, may find life. You and me, in your own ministry, in your own office, in your own family, whether you are a business person, for me as a priest, we are all invited today to defend and advocate for life. We are invited to have the attitude of availability, to respond to the cries of those at the margin of our society. There are many people at the margin of our society, and they are lamenting, they are crying, they are afraid, they need us. They need our availability. As Jesus, when Jairus reached to him, he did not say, wait. He just got up and said, let us go. We have to learn from the Master to be available to respond to many cries. In our country, there is no need for us to look for the microscope in order to find where are people who are crying. It's just enough to stand at the road or even in the churchyard to look at the face of your neighbor, and you will find that this face is crying for life. So we are invited to be available. We are invited to live and give life without doubt. because this is the first mission. If this is the main project of God, that we may have life, also it is my project, it is your project, since we are the disciples of Jesus. So let us live and give life. Let us not be afraid to give life for our brothers and sisters who are crying every day. Jesus is an example to us now in the readings which we have had. He got up, he went to give life back to the daughter of Jairus. He gave back life to this woman who suffered for 12 years. So let us not be afraid to live and to give life to our brothers and sisters. Let us assume the attitudes of Jesus, the attitudes of compassion, the attitude of humility, the attitude of solidarity, closeness to the neighbor who is in need, commitment with social justice. Our country is spoiled. We need to commit ourselves in social justice to bring back justice, to bring back peace, to bring back unity to this soil. And let us not be afraid. Let us assume these attitudes of Jesus in order to rebuild our community. Let us allow ourselves to be touched, to be challenged, to be provoked by the suffering of our people in our country here. No matter in which part of this country, let us not be indifferent. Let us voice out, and let us allow that the suffering of these people will make us to commit ourselves to do something so that peace may come. Peace is not only of two people. Peace is of all of us. If I live well in my family, if I commit myself in my place of work, peace will come. But if I say I wait the peace which is coming from Ethiopia or coming from Sudan or Kenya, we will not get it. Peace will come if I live well in my family, if I live well in the place of my work, if I live well in my country. Peace will come. Peace is spoiled because our hearts are also spoiled. So let us allow the suffering of our brothers and sisters to touch us, as the suffering of this woman of 12 years, of this child of 12 years who is dying, touched the life of Jesus. And Jesus said, I have to do something. Also for us, for me, for you, we are invited to say, what can I do in front of this suffering? And this needs a collective work. We have to be proactive so that all of us will have life in abundance, and that nobody will say that I am a foreigner in my own country. Nobody will say that I feel insecure. Let us allow the suffering of the people to touch us as it touches the life of Jesus. In our own places of work, in our own family, in our own churches, let us form and train communities that become centers of radiation of love. A community, a Christian community that cannot radiate love to the others is not a Christian community. If I, as a priest, and you, as lay people, we cannot radiate this love, then Jesus is not our master. We are the disciples of Jesus. Whether I am a priest or a lay person or a bishop or a pope, we are all invited to form communities, to form families that can radiate love, not hatred, not revenge, not violence, not aggression. So we would like to give thanks to God for this message of today, and we ask Him to give us His strength. As He is telling Jairus, do not fear, only believe. So we would like to ask God to renew our faith, to renew our belief, that with this belief we may go back and transform our society so that it will be a country, a family, a ministry, an institution full of life.